Hi, welcome to Beginning Cooks. Today I'm going to be doing a video requested by Martin Jacobo. This video will be on TS 16949, ISO standards for the automotive industry. What is TS 16949? Well, it's an ISO specification built around the PDCA cycle. That stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. A very basic cycle that is key to many quality systems. Like ISO 9001, which is the basic ISO, it is focused on building a quality management system to continuously improve a manufacturing system and prevent defects. It was first created in 1999 by the International Automotive Task Force, an international governing body for automotive manufacturers. TS 16949 aims to be adopted across the entire automotive supply chain. So it's looking at Tier 1 suppliers, Tier 2 suppliers, automotive assembly companies. Many large Japanese manufacturers deviate from the standards a bit, although there are still many similarities. In recent years, I just found this out, it was superseded by the IATF 16949 2016 standards, so it's now controlled by a different governing body. Typically, standards are reviewed every 5 years. This one, not only was it changed, but it switched organizations. The manuals for these, whether physical or electronic versions, are usually around $30, so they're not crazy expensive. Many manufacturers match their quality manual codes to the TS 16949 chapter codes. This just makes things really easy in practice. So when an auditor comes and says, I'd like to talk about product realization, you can flip open your quality manual and say, okay, that's going to be chapter 7. Just like it's chapter 7 in the standards, it's chapter 7 in our quality manual. So what is actually in the TS 16949 standard? Well, let's go over some of the sections and compare it to ISO for a good reference. Chapters 1 through 3 are all just an introduction. You actually won't be audited on these sections. So much like sections 1, 2, and 3 of ISO deal with the scope of the manual, references, and terms and definitions, chapters 1 through 3 of TS 16949 are much the same. It really gets interesting once you get to section 4.2, documentation requirements. This is where a lot of the meat of the standard is at. 4.2.1 is just general requirements. 4.2.2 is the quality manual. So what do you need in your quality manual to pass the audit? An area that's very interesting for me, and it's really good to have this in place, is section 4.2.3, control of documents. So this is huge. You'll have a document control list. How do you create a new document? How do you approve it? How do you know when it was created? Who has control over the document to make sure the new ones are being used and the old ones are being filed away? This seems very nitty-gritty and maybe too specific, but in the fast-paced world of automotive engineering and automotive manufacturing, this is huge. You want to make sure everyone is using the newest versions of the document. Not only are you controlling your own internal documents, but you also have to control engineering specifications and make sure they are up to date. Not only that, but you have to control records. That's 4.2.4. So any record you create of any process or anything, how are you going to control that record and keep it for reference? How are you going to make sure you retain them? Chapter 5 deals with the responsibility of management. This is a lot like Section 5 of ISO that focuses on leadership. I would say that TS 16949 puts a little bit more emphasis on responsibility. Chapter 6 deals with your management of resources. This is a bit more broad in scope. Where do you get your materials from? What suppliers are you using? Do you have backup suppliers? TS 16949 is a lot like ISO, but it takes on more of a risk perspective. Who's controlling risk? Whether it's management risk, resource risk, who has to control it, and how are you documenting that? Product realization is parallel to the ISO section operations. It focuses a lot on your actual manufacturing processes. Do you have work instructions that document what you're doing? I believe TS 16949 typically calls them operation standards. Do people creating your parts have instructions and proper training that teach them how to do their jobs properly and within quality specifications? And then, of course, near the end of TS 16949, you have Chapter 8, Measurement, Analysis, and Improvement. After you've made the product, you have to make sure you know how to measure it properly, analyze the processes to make sure they're working, and improve upon the mistakes or uncontrolled processes. Also in Chapter 8, you focus on calibration of your fixtures and things of that nature. Any tool you're using to measure your parts has to be properly calibrated. Your parts themselves, you have to sample them and measure them at an acceptable rate so you can confidently say your mass-produced part is within spec. You'll notice that both TS 16949 and ISO are laid out in a similar pattern. They both start with planning, so say what you're going to do exactly. Then they have guidelines for how you do things, how you document it, how you control them. They have guidelines for checking them, sampling, instructions, things of that nature. Then they have guidelines for improvement, which is acting upon the things you've checked to improve them. It's the plan, do, checked, act cycle. That's the core of operations. I like the old quality saying, say what you do and do what you say. It's your quality management system and your quality manual and adhering to these guidelines that will make sure you're saying what you do and you're doing what you say. So you saw the similarities between TS 16949 and ISO. There's a lot of similarities, but a few key differences. Well, why are there even differences in the first place? Well, if you think about it, automotive manufacturing is one of the most expensive forms of manufacturing. Think about the millions of cars there are on the planet, and think about how each car costs tens of thousands of dollars. And these companies, Honda, Ford, companies like that, are making millions of them. Think about all the money you need just to materials, labor, machinery. It's a very expensive process. Because of this cost, you need a more specific defining and controlling of these business and manufacturing processes, especially in relation to the outside of the company, your suppliers, your customers. In automotive manufacturing, there's these long chains. A part could go through 7 different companies before it ends up in a car. So TS 16949 really focuses on making sure you're controlling that entire supply chain. Because of that, TS 16949 also puts an emphasis on meeting customer requirements. That is what led to it being adopted, at least people think. Its wide adoption is because so many customers can say, hey, adopt these standards because these standards will really make you care about our requirements. A certification will last for 3 years, but you get audited every year. Those years between the main audits are called surveillance audits, just because the auditing body wants to put some surveillance on you and make sure you're doing everything appropriate. And then every 3rd year, you have to recertify. It's a more thorough audit. New IATF guidelines even have a brief section on corporate responsibility to prevent bribery and other misconduct. In today's world, especially as we globalize more and more, you're starting to see a lot of organizations and a lot of companies focus on corporate responsibility, whether it's social responsibility or financial responsibility or any other form of responsibility. Many standards are beginning to have components that hold management and the employees accountable. Thank you so much for watching this video on TS 16949. I hope you now understand how it is similar in many ways to ISO, but also much more specific, and how it applies to the automotive manufacturing industry. I made this video because one of my subscribers requested it. So if you're watching my videos and you'd like me to do a video on a new topic, please suggest it. If it's something I can research well or have a good experience with, and I haven't made a video yet, guess what? I'll make a video for you. So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.